So tonight we're going to be looking at a 2016 Dodge Ram 3500 four-wheel drive with a Cummins diesel, and it has a complaint of the ABS and 4x4 and the check engine light all coming on, and the code in question is a C00371D, which is left rear wheel speed sensor circuit out of range active. Now, because the sensor was only around $70 Canadian, the customer opted to replace the sensor himself on the off chance that that was the problem. You can't switch the two electrical connectors. They're keyed differently. Even though they're very similar, they're opposite. You can't mix them up for a purpose, because that's what I would have tried to do, is switch the two sensor connectors, but it doesn't allow for that. I suspect that there's a wiring problem. Obviously it's not the sensor, because we put a new one in and it's doing exactly the same thing. It sets the code immediately. So I had a look on Identifix for potential case histories, and I found one case history that caught my attention here. This is a 2016 Ram 1500, but basically it's the same truck, except the 3500 is obviously heavy duty, and wire harness behind left upper control arm damaged. Dark green gray wire for the left rear sensor. So we're going to have a closer look at that once the truck gets here this evening, and I'm also going to find out where the ABS control module lives on this truck. So here's the electrical circuit for the speed sensor. These are not magnetic pulse generators as they used to be. These ones are digital two-wire sensors. So as such, they get a 12-volt signal on this plus wire, and we don't have 12 volts there from what I recall. Now, some of the systems will shut down the 12 volts if they see a problem with the circuit. I'm not sure if this one works this way. If we get a chance, maybe we'll compare it to the right side by disconnecting the right side speed sensor and see if we lose the 12 volt power. It shows an inline chassis engine transmission connector, but it doesn't say specifically where that is, and there's no hyperlinks on these OEM diagrams, which kind of sucks. What's wrong with the connector number, Chrysler? So it looks like the anti-lock brake module is right on the hydraulic control unit. It does mention that it has to be programmed with a scan tool. Now, which kind of scan tool that would be, I bet you that's going to be Chrysler's only scan tool. And because it's not an emission related module, it probably cannot be done with a J2534 pass-through. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So in the wiring diagram, it did show an inline chassis engine transmission connector, and instead of identifying it by a connector number like they have here, I240, in the schematic it didn't have that. It just had the terminology inline chassis engine transmission connector. So this shows a picture of the connector. It says available views, location view, and it shows the left rear dark green and yellow and dark green and gray. And that's the dark green and gray wire, that is the power wire. My understanding is the signal rides on top of both wires, either by varying the voltage slightly or varying the amperage slightly. I'm not sure, but regardless, we got to find this connector, because it would be nice to establish whether the problem is a corroded terminal inside this connector. So there is the inline chassis engine transmission connector, sort of directly under the driver's floor, looks like on the inside of the frame, and it looks like the ABS unit is directly below the driver floor as well. So it's in that general vicinity, and we'll have a close look at that, plus the wiring. Yeah, it keeps showing the same thing, Ram heavy duty. So, waiting for the vehicle to show up. So that's the inline chassis connector that they talk about.
Yeah.
These two wires right here, let me turn the light on here, are for the left speed sensor, and the other two wires on the other corner are for the right one, the yellow and blue, and the gray and orange are for the left. And we have 12 volts on this wire, or 11.8 volts with the key on, and we have 11.8 volts on the other wire, but back here at the rear speed sensor connector,
we have nothing.
We have nothing back here on the left speed sensor. So somewhere along the frame there's an open. So we've temporarily installed a jumper wire from the connector in the middle of the truck to the wheel speed sensor connector at the back, re-establishing voltage to that wire, and now we have a speed signal on that circuit. So there's definitely an open circuit somewhere up above the gas tank, which is not pleasant to get to. So we're going to have a look at data now that we've repaired the wires. Problem appeared to be broken wire somewhere above the DEF tank. We didn't actually find it, but we made a twisted pair and ran it from that connector. Left rear wheel speed signal. Okay, spin the wheels. What? What's going on now? So here's what I did wrong. I made the assumption that the wires at the back of this connector headed to the back of the truck, when in reality the wires on the front of this connector actually go over the frame and loop back to the back of the truck. So I ended up cutting the wrong two wires when I spliced it, and we ended up making a second harness and running a new harness from this connector all the way back and creating two problems. So got it sorted out now. Honestly, I think this is what happened when a mechanic sleeps with an engineer's wife. Well, we finally were able to clear the codes in this thing. Note how the ABS and brake warning light and park brake warning light flash when you're in communication with the scan tool. I'm going to exit out of communication here, out of the ABS system, and now it stops. There was a code in the transmission computer. I'm going to clear that as well. Okay. And we're just going to double check that the codes are gone. Good. Well, we'll take this for a road test, but I think it's going to be fine now.